Circumcision is the most common surgery in America. Whether or not you choose to learn about it, it's there, directly impacting the majority of American men in the most intimate way possible.
One of the things I found about this issue is that nobody who thinks about it will ever forget it. They might not ever want to talk about it. They might spend time explaining that it's not an important issue, but people will circle back.
And yet, many Americans have never taken the time to think deeply about circumcision. Circumcision is the surgical removal of the foreskin, the foremost part of the male penis. And in America, it is typically performed on infants, within the first few days of life. No other industrialized country routinely practices non-religious infant circumcision, other than America. Isn't it odd that Americans have never had a national conversation about one of the central practices of their culture, a practice which affects so many on such a personal level? One group is starting a conversation about circumcision in America.
Intactivism is a social movement of people who believe that all children have a right to keep the genitals they were born with. Cutting any part of their genitals off is a violation of human rights.
And there are activists all over the world that understand our message, that boys and girls are born with a body that is their right to keep.
They feel that that boy's right to decide for himself is more important than the parent's right to decide what's best for him.
It's a very powerful, compelling topic. For one thing, if you've acquiesced to having your child circumcised, and then you hear later that it might not have been the right thing, that's a mortifying feeling. It's a feeling either that overwhelms you with embarrassment or grief or rage, or it's one that you want to dismiss, but it's not a neutral thing. It's never a neutral thing for a parent.
Is there any parts removed, or is it just an incision?
The 5 most sensitive parts of the penis are removed during surgery.
Wow. I'll read up on that. I didn't know. I thought it was just an incision. I had no idea they actually removed tissue.
It's very harmful because it's done to the baby without their permission.
You guys know that it's hygienic, right? You do know that, right?
It's not. I mean,
It's
you think
not.
we just came here and set up a demonstration without knowing what anything about it?
You know it is hygienic. You know, women have foreskin as well, right? They have
Okay,
full skin. That's totally different.
And they have vaginas with lots
That's
of
totally
folds.
different. Now, why? Because they have sensitive nerve endings. And it's very...
If you're a circumcised man, it's a potentially awful thing to think about. Okay, I was tied down when I was a baby and somebody cut part of my body off. That's not so great, but I don't remember it. Maybe you know what, I'm fine. And all of this stuff comes into play, and I don't think you can just walk away from feelings like that.
I've been around a lot of social movements, but the one thing that's unique about the genital integrity movement is that it's all tragedy through and through. Something horrible happened to all of them to bring them here. Nobody came here feeling good about circumcision and then got involved. It's because something's happened to them or something's happened to somebody that they care about that's ruined their life. And I don't think that's too strong of a phrase either. Circumcision fundamentally changes you forever.
I went through what's called the obsessive epiphany. Everybody knows who works in this business knows the epiphany. It's the moment when you go over the top on this issue and you realize that there's more here than meets the eye. And that even though it's normative in your culture, there's something strange about it. So I started doing the late night research, which virtually anybody that you interview on this subject will tell you about the late night research. It takes over your life. You're reading everything, and you're reading the footnotes to the footnotes to the footnotes, and going deeper and deeper and getting more and more horrified and more angry. I mean, I can't even remember what I did, but I'm sure I put circumcision in the Google window, if Google even existed then, and just went from there. And there's just a massive literature on the subject, a massive literature. You could spend a lifetime reading it all, whether from a religious perspective, anthropological, sociological, legal, medical, bioethical, name your field or discipline, and it has something on the subject. So, I mean, for the serious scholar, there's just endless opportunities there to horrify yourself, amaze yourself, and wonder why this ever got started.
I went to my first Intactivist gathering. They were some of the most interesting people I had ever met.
We were having my 4th child in the hospital. That night, we came across Marilyn Milos, who was a nurse in the hospital.
I discovered that there were activists out there, in particular Marilyn Milos.
Marilyn Milos, who we consider the mother of us all, who started sounding the call 30-odd years ago.
I went back to school to be certified as a nurse midwife. My last rotation, May of 1979, I witnessed a circumcision. And that's when I realized the horror of what would do to babies behind closed doors. And I'd never heard a scream like that come out of the mouth of a human being before. I started to cry, and I was standing next to the baby to comfort him. And the doctor saw me. I just couldn't control myself, and I projectile tears. And he looked at me and said, "There's no medical reason for doing this." So not only was I witnessing a torture and mutilation of a baby, I was also hearing that it wasn't necessary. And then, of course, the question is, well, why then are we doing it? But as I began to inform parents, as I became informed and informed the other nurses, the head nurse came to me one day and she said, there's somebody on the floor who's upsetting patients by talking about circumcision. And I said, well, we're all doing the education. Our job as nurses is to educate. And they said, well, we can't have you upsetting the patients, Marilyn. So in 1985, when I was fired, that's when we became a nonprofit organization. We filed a lawsuit in 1982. A little boy was circumcised, the mother didn't want it, the father did. We went to the Superior Court, and the judge then said, because circumcision is the oldest surgery known to man, and because of the court's reluctance to interfere with family life, we're going to just say that it's okay for this is a decision that's up to the parents. So nobody was ready to hear it. But I think that is how this sort of began burgeoning forth into the media and so forth, and the backlash with the Showens and the AAP.
I got interested in circumcision in 1987 when I was asked by American Academy of Pediatrics to chair the American Academy of Pediatrics Task Force on Circumcision. The reason why they formed that task force was because the American Academy of Pediatrics had actually put its foot in its mouth in 1971. Somebody wrote a single sentence, we don't even know who wrote it, saying there are no valid medical indications for newborn circumcision.
The American Academy of Pediatrics came out firmly against circumcision and said it was unnecessary, there was no reason for it. And there was a howl of complaint from their membership, from having performed this surgery for so long and suddenly turning their back on it.
But that became the official policy of the American Academy of Pediatrics, no valid indication, and the anti-circ still go back to that all the time.
So they have a vested interest in maintaining the procedure, in not angering the 70 million American men who are circumcised, and admitting nothing.
It completely was out of line with what the function of the committee was, to show that there are indications. So that was that, until my committee.
And he went in with the same laundry list of excuses. I know he finagled his way into that position.
One of the things I said before I took the job, I said, I don't want this committee to be under the thumb of the Committee of the Fetus and Newborn, which put out the other one.
And another doctor who was on that committee at one point threw his hands up in the air and said, I'm out of here. This is undemocratic. You came in expecting to railroad a position through.
We had one neonatologist on the committee who was very committed to the old position. And as a matter of fact, before we even had our first meeting, he said, I ain't going to change my mind. The evidence has just been accumulating in favor. And every month you look at it, there's another article, I can't keep up with it. There's one guy that keeps sending me new papers. Ryan, stop sending me another HPV paper.
So what I'm going to tell you today is that male circumcision is better for genital health, public health, and individual well-being. The reason I became passionate about it is because I'm passionate about science and evidence-based medicine. And I became aware that there are individuals in society who are anti-science and in favour of, retaining the foreskin. There's a whole list of risk factors in life that people should become aware of. Not to smoke, not to drink to excess, and another one is to ensure that their infant children get circumcised. I've had communications with the chair of the AAP committee, so I have been involved over the years as an international expert. I am a person who likes to speak up. It might be my Baptist upbringing, who knows? Now, I'm not going to preach religion, but I've got this message about health, and I'm happy to preach it in all its various shapes and forms, and one of those aspects is circumcision. Those who oppose circumcision are causing needless deaths, needless suffering for people in our community. They should desist.
Do you really think there's deaths that are caused?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Deaths from HIV/AIDS, deaths from penile cancer, and many deaths from cervical cancer. All preventable by circumcision.
In the parental decision-making, there's beyond the medical, there's the non-medical aspects, whether you want to call that cultural, religious, aesthetic, family tradition, personal experiences, whatever it is. People may use the medical as a justification, but it really comes down to the end of the day. Parents really want it, parents don't want it. I think that the report tried to make an effort to bring that out into the open and say that not only is that the case, but that that's valid and that parents' wishes, even for their non-medical considerations, are a valid part of their making this decision. In my practice, I like to sort of define it as a tribal custom, And if you belong to a tribe that does it, then you really want it. And you can define tribe however you want. Now keep in mind, this is not a universally accepted standard. This is roundly condemned by the intactivists who feel that the overriding ethical concern is the right to bodily integrity, and no one should be able to alter your body without your consent. To me, that's actually the more interesting controversy or reason topic for discussion. And we have to decide as a society, what are our ethical standards?
If we go back far enough, what we find is that fathers were circumcising their children, not ritually in the Jewish style, but as a sacrifice to whatever deities they were sacrificing to at the time. As a matter of fact, some scholars have given us pretty good evidence that circumcision may have evolved as a substitute for child sacrifice. How did it become a Jewish ritual is the question. There you have to look at the Bible, the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, in which the creator of the universe appears to a 99-year-old man named Abraham, tells him that he will be able to impregnate his elderly 90-year-old wife, and that their children will give rise to a tremendous nation. However, he says, you must cut the flesh of your foreskin. What happened at first was a fairly simple removal of the front part of the foreskin and no more. It was only later that practice evolved further, first because Jewish men during the Hellenistic period